Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Nice looking Thursday morning. Dr. John W. Grace has been with us before, many times actually, and he's with us again right now. And 2 days from today, the event that we've been hearing about for a few months now is going to happen over in Crystal River. It's called Dash for Dementia. It is a fundraiser to help raise some funding for the Memory Enhancement Center of America, which is a not-for-profit organization to aid with cognitive impairment through cloud-based technology. And if you've heard Dr. Grace on these airwaves the last couple of times he's been here, he's been explaining what that means. Dr. Grace, of course, is a board-certified psychiatrist, and he practices over in Crystal River. And let me make sure that you are aware of the phone number out there, listeners. So if you want to call in to Dr. Grace, you are invited to do so. The number is 622-9622. That is the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline. Good morning, Dr. Grace. How you doing?
Good morning, and let me also give you the number for the office as well. It's 795-2246, and the number for the Memory Enhancement Center is 746-0125. And I think that the Dash is serves two functions. I mean, one obviously is a fundraiser because it is a non-for-profit organization, but I also think of it as kind of a coming out party for the organization, for people just to come out and learn about what we're doing and also what we're planning to do. I think if you hear about the center, if you get to see what our plans are and how we can help right now, and also how we're going to be helping in the future, I think you'll be pretty excited about it. If you have a patient or a family member, or even with yourself, you're having some memory issues. So. Yeah, come out, and even if you don't want to come out and give us money, come out and say hi and learn about what we're doing. I think you'll be kind of excited about.
And tell us where is it again?
It's going to be at Lecanto High School from 9 till noon tomorrow, and
Saturday, right?
I'm sorry, Saturday.
Saturday, yeah.
Sorry, Saturday. Yeah, don't.
Go tomorrow.
But yeah, we're going to have some of the tests that we use at the center on the computer. We're going to let you kind of play around and take those, and you can kind of see how we go about the process of figuring out what form of memory problem you're having, because like we've talked about many times before, the diagnosis is so critical, and early diagnosis and management really change the course of the condition. So it really is something that we have to get people a little less frightened about, a little bit more excited about screening and managing as they go, because I think it makes a big difference for quality of life. Does
memory loss always happen gradually?
No, it can happen sudden. That's a great question. I think that people, when it's sudden, I think people are actually a little more motivated to go do something about it. Gradual, I think, is a lot easier to have the ostrich head in the sand kind of effect.
Right.
You make excuses for yourself. Other people make excuses for you, and it's kind of striking when you do see that gradual memory loss, how much compensatory mechanisms have taken place. I mean, we'll have someone bring someone in or something, and we'll say, well, how's their memory? And they'll say, well, they may forget a few things, and I'll say, well, who is this sitting next to them? And they've forgotten that it's their wife or their brother or their son, and the person is just absolutely shocked.
Oh, wow.
Sitting there, because it's happened so gradual, and you would be surprised as you get into a routine how much memory loss you can have before people really take notice. So sudden, I would say, is critical, but people are a lot more likely to go get help, I think, when there's a quick onset to memory loss.
And is there always help? Is there always a solution to what is the problem, whatever the problem is, when it's a memory loss problem?
Well, I think there's almost always something that you can do. Very few of the conditions have essentially no benefit from either medication or structure or education. And I would say that even educating a caregiver is a big part of the condition too. I mean, because they're not really aware of how exhausting it can be, how beaten down they can get. So I would say that there's always some benefit from interacting with a professional with these kinds of conditions.
And you've been doing it for a long time. So are you a little bit more intuitive when it comes to just speaking to somebody that maybe they've lost the memory?
Yeah, I think so, and there's certainly knowing what type of person they are, knowing kind of what we would call the pre-morbid conditions that they may have brought to the table is really important to know, and also know the dynamics of the caregiver. I mean, how they interact, how long they've been interacting. I mean, one of the things that I think is really fascinating is family dynamics in dementia. If you let's say you have a lot of anger towards your dad. You guys had a lot of fights when you were younger. That will come across later in life while you're taking care of him when he has dementia. It's
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So sort of exploring how that dynamic took place and how it's playing out in the real time, 30, 40 years later is kind of fascinating.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Does the reverse happen as well? If you were a much loved child and you're taking care of your parent, do you all of a sudden find yourself just embracing them or maybe?
Well, that's a wonderful question, and I've seen this again and again. It's very tragic and very sad. And one of the statements that I'll have to make to kids like that, like let's say you had wonderful parents and they're losing their memory, and when we're dealing with the family, one of the things I'll have to say is I'll have to take them aside, I'll have to look them dead in the eye and say, you're going to have to accept that they were able to do more for you than you are for them. And it's just devastating to these people. Mom and dad were there for me. Yeah, you're right. They were there for you their whole life. And with their condition, there's only a little bit that you can help them. And you have to accept that. Otherwise, you're going to try to over-control the situation. You're going to be too dramatic. You're going to try to take more charge of it than you really have control. And that's really, really brutal. A brutal reality that I think people who have a really good relationship with their parents have to accept is that they were probably able to help you more with your problems when you were a child than you're able to help them.
So the only way to ever pay them back is to maybe pass it on to your own children.
Well, that's what I say. I'll say to them, you can't take care of your dad so much now, but you can probably do the thing that would matter most to him, and that's take care of his kid. Take care of yourself, take care of your grandkids,
The Memory Enhancement Center that you're creating is a wonderful idea, and I think one of the important parts of this wonderful idea is exactly what you're doing right now, is to get the word out about it. It's kind of like having a hamburger stand in town and not knowing it's there. If you suddenly have a memory-related problem with somebody you love, and you just have no clue, you've never heard of something called a Memory Enhancement Center, you wouldn't know. But just knowing that there's help out there is hugely important, I think.
And a starting point. I think the nice thing about a nonprofit organization is that nobody really associated with it is making any money from what they're doing right there. It's basically serving a function of connecting these other organizations, and that's a sort of a safe place for people to start. I think sometimes when you talk about memory care, you almost have the opposite problem. We have a reading list for the center that's 8 pages long, and we had talked about that before, giving people a pile of books while they're already an overwhelmed caregiver. Right. I think you need somebody to walk people through the resources that are available, not just say, here they all are, go figure it out.
Right.
And you have to have a staff that isn't in the mindset of 9 to 5. They have to be technically on call 24/7, and if they're speaking with a family, they can't be looking at their watch thinking they're going to be ending their shift soon.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely part of this, is that, certainly I'm not always working 24/7, but the connection is. And when we talk about the center, we're talking about when you go to an emergency room, when you go to one of these places that is after hours, they're going to have access to that information so that they can treat you with a little bit more personal touch. You're exactly right.
Doctor, I'd like to bring something into this conversation that really stems from a conversation we had with a lady who could communicate to the dead, and you'll see why in a second. Because the question was, well, what do you ask somebody who's passed on? And well, whatever you want to know. And we were discussing this, that if you're a husband and a wife, and you've been married for 45 years, chances are you're sitting in the living room, you don't really want to extract information from one another. It's just being together. It's I don't necessarily need to extract information from you, even in the course of a radio interview I do, but if we're hanging out, that's just fun to hang out, share a beer or whatever, a pizza or something. It's not really an exchange of information with people you love. as much as it is just being with people you love. So how I'm applying that to this is if somebody is married and one of the two is going through a memory loss process, is starting to lose their memory, do they have that same need to just simply be there with that person? And does putting that person into a facility eventually tear them apart the way it would anybody?
Well, there's a few components to that question. First, one thing that I think that we discount tremendously, and we had a student here last week, and I want to tell you a little bit about what we do with them, is how much communication is actually not verbal. You know, we have a patient in one of our facilities that can only say 2 words. That's it. He can just say, like, hello. You would be amazed at how much he can communicate with that single word. And you realize that most of language is actually not verbal. So, I mean, even when you're sitting there, you're actually saying a lot to the person by how you're sitting, by the posture that you're sitting in. And again, and this is back to the specifics of dementia, is that you may be able to not remember words to things, but you can still remember, I feel comfortable around this person. I feel at ease around this person. All those things that you're talking about. So there's actually a lot more communication going on between you and me hanging out than simply, I mean, the biggest thing is that I trust you enough to sit here and be quiet with you. That's a lot of human communication going on. Now back to your other question, when you put someone in a facility, what happens to that dynamic? Well, strangely enough, when someone's at that level of care, a lot of that communication is actually gone. It's lost because you're spending so much time doing the logistics of caring for them, you know, changing them, getting their breakfast ready and things like that. And so we actually find that sometimes communication will go up because the spouse will come in and then they're just interacting. I always like to talk to my memory patients, family, as well as the staff, because it's very interesting. The staff will let me know when someone's having a problem. You know, they're yelling or they're having a behavioral issue. The family lets me know when they're not interacting, because that's what they expect. They come there and they want to interact with that person. So I kind of need both of those pieces of the puzzle to let me know whether or not we're doing the right thing for them. So.
Wow. So, okay, and I really got that. That rang true, actually, the fact that the communication level goes up. So does it enhance the caregiver's experience with the person who's now no longer living with him or her? Or is their relationship improved?
I think so. I mean, again, I think caregiver neglect is really one of the most important things about educating about dementia. I mean, you just see these people run themselves into the ground and be a shell of them former selves, and then they say, well, I have to be there for, you know, my loved one. It's like, you're not there for your loved one. You're gone, man. You're checked out. You're so run down at this point. How much of you is left? You know?
Wow. And how heavy is that? Because you know what? If you said that to me, if I was in that circumstance, I would know you were telling me the truth. I wouldn't want to hear it. I would maybe deny it a little bit, but I think it would ring for me. I think I'd say, gosh, he's absolutely right.
It does, and it takes time. And I'll tell you what's funny is that you sort of have all these snippets of things that you say, and when it really hits home and it strikes them like you're describing, I mean, it's like this lightning bolt, and, you know, everybody in the room gets it. And they think that you're really smart for saying it, and it's like, well, you know, I kind of say the same thing, and sometimes people are just ready to hear it. You know, it's like there's no rhyme or reason to when it has that effect. I can't say, you know, that it's that brilliant of a thing that it always has an effect. It's just, you know, 1 in 10 times it just really hits home.
Do children understand what's happening, or are they more scared than the adults in their life as to what's going on with their grandparents per se?
I think they take their parents' lead. You know, children can feel your own emotion, and that's, you know, that's why I think it's so important for the parents to have a good self-relationship as they're doing this. I don't want to see you beating yourself up, telling yourself you're a piece of garbage because you can't make this better. I want to see you proud of yourself, proud of the work, proud of caring for your parents in front of your kids, because they pick up on that. You know, they pick up on your shame, they pick up on your pride. You know, take care of yourself in front of your children is the most important message that I'll send to people. And I can't say that any time is more critical than when you're also caring for someone with dementia.
I want our listeners to know your number again, so I'm going to ask you to repeat it, but I want to kind of endorse you a little bit. We are broadcasting mostly to Ocala, and I know that a lot of listeners to this topic are listening because it's really important to them. You are in Crystal River, and for those listeners who need to find somebody who really, truly knows his stuff when it comes to psychology and to the whole field of dementia, which is only part of what Dr. Grace does, I mean, the ride to Crystal River is going to pay off. You're going to be better off because you're going to be in the presence of somebody who can really cut to the chase and figure out what's going on. Not to say that there's anything with the doctors here, but we've known Dr. Grace for a long time. So I just wanted to kind of give you our...
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have a lot of patients from Ocala. And you know, I think that especially with mental health, a lot of it is about chemistry. You know, how good you feel with the person that you're with. And a great story from medical school. I was rotating through with a surgeon, and the guy was the biggest jerk that I'd ever seen. And I went out and interviewed one of his patients, and he said, I just love Dr. Smith or whatever his name was. And I was like, really? And I'm thinking, what do you love about this guy? Because he's the most abrasive, caustic individual I've ever come across in my life. He's like, well, he gives it to me straight. And, you know, he did. I mean, he would insult his patients right to their face. But it showed me that how important that chemistry is. You know, it's like there's just if it's a good fit, it fits. If it's not, you know, that's okay. And I think with mental health, that's really critical too. So.
And you have to be upfront and honest. You can't just beat around the bush if you're the doctor to the patient and try to sugarcoat things. You have to be upfront, but you have to do it in your own way with your own personality and not try to be somebody else's way of communicating.
It's so fascinating you say that because, as you know, like you said, we go way with back and we've done these shows. And I think initially when I did them, I was so nervous. I tried to be something maybe that I wasn't. And I think that, yeah, it just doesn't ring true. You gotta be yourself, and some people will like who you are and some people won't, and that's just the way it is.
And from the listener's perspective, the ones who really will benefit from your services, everybody appreciates an entertaining conversation.
Right.
You know, but the real truth is getting on the radio and asking a doctor a question so personal as a psychological question. Yeah. That's why your phone number is really important. I mean, it's a different type of informational exchange in a public forum than, let's say, a car mechanic would offer.
You know, I was thinking about that as I came up here, and you know, we talk about promoting the Dash and having a lot of people out there, and wouldn't that be great? And I thought, you know, it's really not about reaching a lot of people. It's about reaching those people that it makes a difference for.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have 1,000 people in an event, is it better to have one person who actually changes their lives? You know, I mean, that kind of, I think that's critical, because when you do these sorts of things, it's strange. You never know what's the switch, what's the thing that kind of makes a big difference in someone's life. So,
yeah. Wow. What is your phone number? We're not done yet, but I just want to make sure that people who wanted to write it down can write it down. And
sure, our office, and you can just do a John Grace search, psychiatry online. It's going to come up on Yahoo, but it's 795-2246 is the office number, and 746-0125, both area code 352, is the Memory Enhancement Center.
Okay, 746-0125. And the event for Dash for Dementia is happening this Saturday. Do you have any goals for the event itself?
Well, like I said, I really haven't interacted. I mean, I've interacted with doctors, I've interacted with EMS, I've interacted with hospitals over this, and we probably put 20 patients, 25 patients through using the early protocols. But I don't think I've talked to as many regular people about the project as I would like. So I hope that's kind of what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping some people come out that are slightly interested and want to sit down and have a chat and look at what we're doing and see if they think they want to be a part of it. Yeah.
Do we understand memory better because of computers? Is our memory similar to our computer's memory in that it can disappear, it can get corrupted?
I mean, there's some analogies there. Processing speed, I think, is a, you know, I think that's a term people would struggle with 10 years ago. You know, if I say that we tested your processing speed, nobody would understand that till they have a computer. But now I say it, it's common lexicon. I mean, people get it. So yeah, there's definitely some parts of memory that are similar, but I think the most fascinating part of memory is how fluid it is. We talk about creation of false memories. We talk about one of my favorite activities is mood charting. We have people chart their mood every day. And study after study, people come in and I say, I need you to chart your mood. And they'll say, well, why? I'm like, well, I need to know how you felt last week. And they're like, oh, I felt the same as, I do now. And I said, I don't care what you tell me about last week, I will not believe you. And that's because study after study after study tells me that you sitting here cannot tell me how you felt a week ago. It's absolutely impossible. You think you can, but it's so dominated by how you feel right now. Its accuracy is ridiculously low.
So how do you even answer that question? I mean, is there a scale of 1 to 5 or something?
Yeah. I mean, you can. I mean, as you chart your mood on a daily basis, we have them do it 1 to 10. You'll get used to it, and you'll have some kind of.
So what's 10? Happy?
10 is way too happy. We use it for manic patients.
Too happy. Okay.
Patient, I'm talking to Jesus. I want to, go and write a book. Everybody's following me. I'm spending thousands of dollars. So people who are too elevated.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. We use it as a scale for people who have too much highs and too much lows. So, but the point of it is like that is very different from a computer. A computer that tells you something happened a week ago is going to be fairly accurate.
Gotcha, right.
A person, particularly when they're describing emotional events, are horrible about. What's another great thing that you always hear people say? Oh, the marriage was bad the last few years. Don't they always say that? I mean, and the reality is, if
women do,
you charted that. Well, no, I mean, but if they got divorced, if people got divorced, they'll say, yeah, it was bad the last few years.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
If you chart that out, the accuracy I would question considerably.
I do too. I always question any one-sided divorce conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's very fascinating for us because people will come in and they'll talk about a spouse or they'll talk about someone else or a parent, another dynamic, and so we'll paint a picture of who this person's living with, and sometimes it's dead on, and sometimes it's absurdly wrong. And it's kind of interesting.
Wow.
Oh yeah, this guy's the biggest jerk. Da 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 da. I can't believe that. No, come in. I'm like, are we talking about the same guy? Because he seems okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like he'll leave. Yeah, can you believe that? How bad he was in there? I'm like, no, he seemed fine.
But you have to be honest with them when they ask that question.
Well, that's right.
They want you to take their side.
They do, but our job is to help people understand where they're distorting things. It's like, he insulted you on a level of a 1 or 2, but I mean, let's face it, you're feeling this like on a 9 or a 10. You're adding to this insult. I saw him; he was a little bit of a jerk, a little bit rude, but he's not where you're feeling it. You've got to understand that you're augmenting this insult.
If I was that guy, I was saying, "What do you mean it's a little bit rude?"
Well, but that's part of being fair. You got to be real. You got to say, look, you're being a little bit of a jerk and you're being a little oversensitive.
Right.
You've got to be honest with people because that's your job, is to sort of look at this dynamic as they're interacting. And this is what you do a lot in couples therapy, and say, this is what he's doing, this is what you're doing, this is why you guys are.
I love our conversations. The fact that we have to wrap it up is always disappointing. Before we do, we've got about a minute. Is there anything we need to make sure we mention that we didn't get to?
Well, like I said, we talked about the transcranial light. We have a partial hospitalization program for people who don't want to go into the hospital fully. We have that down in Crystal River. I think that's a good idea. We're doing a little bit more gene testing in the office, and you can still preview my latest book, which is on the website as well, which is about the spatial nature of emotions and how much that affects how
What's
we
the
feel.
title?
It's called Where Am I?
Where Am I? Okay. All right. So it's published or not yet?
First chapter, introductory chapter.
All right,
so.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's cool.
Wow. Thank you, John, Dr. Grace. Thank you for coming in.
Okay, thanks, guys.
For the listeners, I often refer to Dr. Grace as John because we know him, but on the air it's more appropriate to say Dr. Grace, yes. Thank you. Thank you for coming in, and good luck on Saturday. For everybody else, it's Saturday, April 26th, Lecanto High School at what time?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Okay. Go help out the Dash for Dementia to help raise money for the Memory Enhancement Center of America. All right, we've got to go to Fox News soon. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Another so-called insider attack in Afghanistan.
This time, an Afghan security guard opened fire on a group of American doctors at a hospital in the capital, Kabul. 3 American physicians, including a father and son, were killed. A nurse was also wounded. The attacker is in custody.
Fox Radio's Emily Wither. As tensions mount in eastern Ukraine, Moscow reacting by announcing new military exercises in Russia's south and west. President Obama speaking in Tokyo, accusing Russia of failing to diffuse tensions in Ukraine.
He said that is not the wise path.
We have been preparing for the prospect that we're going to have